All right, welcome to ALI-M.O.N.Y, Episode 5. Ali, Mayor of New York. What if I ran for Mayor of New York? What if I became Mayor of New York? Through some series of events. This is a series of conversations out loud with myself and others to see what I would do if I was Mayor of New York, if I decided to run. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I do not want to be Mayor of New York. I don't think. I don't want to really be a politician. Today is, I think I said it, October 4th, 2023, Wednesday, Hump Day. Why do we call it Hump Day? We call it Hump Day because it's in the middle of a work week. Traditionally, we've worked Monday through Friday and then gotten Saturday and Sundays off. This has not been the case throughout all of history. Some points throughout history, people worked 7 days a week, 6 days a week, 5.5 days a week. Now some places people are working 4 days a week. I don't know how you quite do it, but you might have to have a 4-day-a-week shift and a 3-day-a-week shift so that America is working 7 days a week. So that one job is done by two people. One does it for 4 days, one does it for 3 days. At this point, I think we just have to create a massive jobs program. I don't quite see how, with the migrant crisis that we have going on in New York City, which I believe the number is at over 100,000 have been relocated here from the southern border. And primarily, I think it's because they've been told that there are social services here, that once you get here, it's a right to shelter, city and state, so they will have a place to live. But New York City is an expensive city. It's pricey. All aspects of it. Well, I mean, I would say the fruit stands still seem somewhat affordable. You can still get 4 bananas for $1. So potentially you could live off of, I don't know, 12 bananas a day, 16 bananas a day, a can of tuna, some protein of some kind, or just pure vegetables. So Ali-M.O.N.Y comes from Ali, ALI-M.O.N.Y, Mayor of New York. I've said this before. And something is happening to my voice. I don't know why. It's getting scratchy. Maybe because of the number of recordings I'm doing. But I want to put these thoughts and ideas out there for other people to take. Today I want to talk about a few things. Again, my platform is simple. Clean streets, safe streets, free streets. First and foremost, we've got to clean the streets. And again, nobody's going to come to clean them. I don't see anybody really coming to paint the mailboxes. I know they have some kind of community groups that have hired other people to come, and they'll come and they will throw some paint on a mailbox, but most likely most mailboxes stay graffitied. I'm talking about the green ones. The Bindle box is the one used as midway points for mail carriers to put mail or put their supplies in. Those have just become graffiti and tagging posts. As I said, we repaint our own on our block where we can. If one gets tagged, we have a can of green paint, we have paintbrushes, paint rollers, we do it. I think we have to deputize people in the city to be able to say, you can do this, we allow you, we will not arrest you, thank you for your help. Who's going to do it? Now, every building has a super. The super is the superintendent of the building, and it's their responsibility to keep the building going, and usually they have a staff of some kind to help them. We need their help. I know they've got a lot on their plate. I know they have to deal with their buildings, whether it be a commercial building or a residential building. I know they have a lot of elements in the building to deal with. And again, it may also be the restaurants and bars in the area to say, look, I know you got a lot going on. You're trying to run a food and beverage establishment. I understand. We also run food and beverage establishments. It's not easy. However, I believe if you get a can of green paint or a quart of green paint and a paint roller and a rolling kit, that you too can help New York and help your business. There is an Italian restaurant I walk by once or twice a day as I'm walking our dog. And again, as I've said, I think if you get the right people on the Supreme Court in the next 50 years, the law of the land will be that every American has to have a dog by 18. If you get the right people on the Supreme Court, you can get anything done. That's what I found out in my lifetime. You just need the right 9 people on the court. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most powerful acts a president can do, aside from going to war. It's who they put on the Supreme Court. And ostensibly, they're putting people on the Supreme Court that are going to implement their wishes, which is why we are where we are in this country right now with Roe v. Wade, right to choose, right to life, however you phrase it. So if you get the right people on the Supreme Court, you can drop the voting age. You can make it that everyone has to have a dog or cat. You can do really whatever you want in the next 50 to 100 years, if that is your desire. That's the amazing thing. And so I try to look at the world through the eyes of a dog, a puppy. And when I'm walking the dog around, and again, I feel very privileged and blessed to have a dog. We needed something during COVID, some mental health benefits. And it was time to get the family a dog. We needed something. And we've got a beautiful dog, and I wish everyone had a dog like this. I think it would change the world if everyone had a dog. For some reason, my voice is scratchy today, so I'm having to pause and stop and cough. I don't know quite what it is. Could be the weather, could be aging. Because I remember I watched a video of Biden the other day when he was younger. He didn't sound the way he sounds now. Age takes its toll on everything. Our body, our mind, our hearing, our voices. The strong, deep voice one had in their youth may lose that as the vocal cords age. And I will be 55 this month. Again, young to some, old to others. I've told people my age and they've said, oh, you're just a youngin'. I guess because they were 65 or 70 and they just considered 55 young. But 55, this is the time where you hopefully are productive. You're doing a few things for society. And someone who is a politician, ostensibly and hopefully, is doing it because they want to serve the citizens where they live. Now, everybody has a different way of serving them and a different ideology of how they can serve them. But I think at a basic level, it's making sure there are access to services. Services like clean air, right? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Everything that's not about global warming, global broiling, global boiling is a distraction. Right now, it is happening. Now, you can say, I don't believe it's happening. This is the way the weather is. It goes through these cycles. Okay, but let's act like it is and start making arrangements as if it is happening. If you think you are diabetic, but you don't have the resources to go to a doctor and check your blood levels, go ahead and act like you're diabetic and start eating the things you know are better for you. Act as if you already have it. So why don't we act as if global warming, global broiling is real? And go ahead and say, look, if it's not, well, great. We put less carbon in the ozone. We did whatever we could to try to protect the atmosphere. And great, it benefited us. And whatever we do, it's not something we're going to see immediately, because the damage that's been caused has probably been caused over the last 50 to 100 years of putting the amount of chemicals and fossil fuels and whatever we're burning, putting those into the atmosphere. So even if somehow we were able to begin today, and where is it coming from? It's coming from cars. Cars are pumping out CO2. And if you don't believe that will kill you, then what about people who go into a garage, close the garage door, turn on their car, open their windows, and slowly fall asleep and die? That's coming from the CO2 out of their exhaust. So obviously it can kill you. We're just saying, okay, because it's open air, maybe it won't kill us because it's dissipating, but it's still out there. And this summer we felt the effects of global warming with the fires in Canada and the smoke in New York City and the levels of heat and the levels of flooding. It was real. The city flooded last week. All right, I had to pause for a second to update the computer, but I listened to what I said, and yes, I stand behind what I said. I believe global warming is real. I believe everything that's not about global warming is a distraction, but we can't just stop doing other things. As mayor of New York, there are things you can do, which is ideally reduce the traffic on the streets. I've talked about odds and even days for driving. That would dramatically reduce the congestion on the streets if on certain days you were only allowed to drive if you had a license plate that ended in an odd number, and on other days if it ended in an even number. it might cut traffic in half and would put less toxins and carbon dioxide into the air and make the air cleaner. I don't know if New York City has factories. So essentially, the air quality is coming from the amount of cars burning gasoline. And, again, this one I didn't necessarily want to talk about this, but I'm allowing these 30-minute segments to go where they will go. This one I wanted to talk about parks, and essentially parks for children. I don't think you can invest enough money and resources to make sure all children in the 5 boroughs have a decent park around where they live and go to school. Children need places to play. They need places to run around. They need places to hang from, to jump. They need places for imaginary play. They need places to socialize. And really, there's no better place than a park. Now, are there going to be bullies at parks? Are there going to be people saying negative things, practicing being mean? Yes. It's unfortunate. There's going to be mean kids out there. Most likely because it's a cry for help, because a parent or somebody's being mean to them, an older brother. And then they're going to, continue the cycle. But regardless of that, we need to have a massive parks program for children. Really, the children are what we have to invest in, making sure that their education, their play, the food they're getting, the battle now is going to be the devices. It seems like every child's got a device, and the devices are basically, you've got a TV in your pocket. You've got a stereo in your pocket. You've got a audio library in your pocket. I was thinking about it the other day that if somebody 25 years ago walked around with a small television that was basically attached around their neck but sat on their chest so they could watch TV while they walked around, we would think that was crazy. What's going on? But now, because the device is smaller, everyone has got a television with them. They're all watching some bit of content, whether it's, a video game, whether it's YouTube. So the battle for really the hearts and minds of children, is not just dealing with people trying to get their attention in terms of tobacco industry or big sugar or food industry or processed foods. Those are also a battle. The battle to get them out to play, to be able to, go to school, have a good school experience, and hopefully all children are, I think you've got to also get back to basics with education. You've got to make sure that every child can read, every child can read out loud, every child can write, every child can get up and give a little public speaking. Then you've got to deal with arithmetic, which is essentially, at a basic level, rough math. Do they know their times tables up to 12 right off the top of their heads? Do they understand what that means? Do they know simple arithmetic, subtraction, division, simple percentages? Just to make sure, look, on a base level, you are understanding the concepts of math. I'm not saying everybody has to do calculus. I'm not saying everyone's got to get a college degree even. I don't even think necessarily now a college degree is necessary for many people. I think I was at a generation where it would have been almost impossible to convince my parents that I wasn't going to college, or even taking a year off before going to college. Luckily, I got to go to a state university in North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. At that time, I believe it was somewhere around $428 a semester was my tuition. The books and the room and the board cost more to live in the dorms than the actual tuition did, I think. But we've got to make education accessible for people who want to get education and encourage as much free education as we can. But also people can be educated online as well. But also some people, if they find out early on, look, I want to do in the trade services. I've seen people do sheetrock. I want to get good at sheetrock. I want to do electrical work. I want to do plumbing work. I think we also have to make sure that we instill in young folks that there's many ways to be happy, generate revenues. I just don't know how in a city like New York, how you do it. How do you, but again, it's the 5 boroughs too. It's not just New York City. It's not just Manhattan. You're not really, as mayor, you're not the mayor of Manhattan. You're the mayor of the 5 boroughs, which, as I've said before, each borough is big enough to be its own city and have its own mayor. I'm sure they have borough presidents. But at a certain point, somebody might go, you know what? How do we facilitate making each of this their own cities and let them really take off on their own? It's difficult to even imagine how someone runs 5 boroughs. I'm sure there's so many people in so many different departments that it's delegated to. But the role of a mayor, I think, is really to connect and unite and communicate with the people in the population. In New York City, it's over 8 million, of how do we all get on the same page and do this together? How do we make sure the streets are clean, the streets are safe, and the streets are free if we don't address it? If someone is not talking about it. Today I was walking to work, as I often do, and there are people bicycling on the sidewalk. Again, there are many things I will talk about throughout these podcasts or half-hour thought experiments that will be said over again, but somebody bicycling on a sidewalk has no sense that this is not right. They either think this is the way they did it in my country, I don't see anything wrong with it, I'm in control of my bicycle, I'm fine, I can do this. They don't get it until tickets are given, bicycles are confiscated, the word gets out that on a base quality of life level, you're not going to be allowed to ride your bicycle delivering food on sidewalks. You're going to ride in the bike lanes or in the driving lanes. You're going to go the right way. You're going to go the right speed limit. And when it's time to deliver, you're going to get off your bicycle and you're going to walk it onto the sidewalk or a post, and you're going to lock it up from there. And then you're going to go deliver what you have to deliver, do what you have to do, then walk it back to the bike lane, look both ways, because you've got to look both ways now. Because the arrows saying you go one way are meaningless to people. People will go either way on a bike lane. And again, I don't ride a bike in New York anymore. I love riding bicycles. My bicycles were borrowed, so I just never got another one. I did city bike for a while, and that was great. It was a game changer. But now I've just been walking. But even when I rode a bike, yes, there are some times where you have to go the wrong way for a little bit. Maybe there's a way to let people know, I know I'm going the wrong way. I just got to get to the next street, then I'll get back on it. Or maybe it's a matter of maybe these bike lanes have to go both ways. Bikes are not going anywhere. It's only going to increase. And it's only going to increase as being able to ride a bicycle or a scooter is a means of making a living by delivering food to people. People will come from all over the world. And I'm sure there are people all over the world who are talking, going, someday I'd love to get to New York, get a bicycle or a scooter and deliver food. And you can just deliver it all day and make money. Because where they're coming from, there's no even opportunity to get a job. And even if you can get a job, the pay is going to be different. The reason people are coming to New York City is because they've heard what the pay can be for doing these jobs. When they asked Dillinger, the bank robber, why do you rob banks? He said, well, that's where the money is. So in the same way, why do people come to New York City? It's because to some degree there's a feeling of that's where the money is. Not realizing, yes, there may be more money than you'd make elsewhere, but the rent is more. The other costs are more. But also, if you have access to social services, you may be getting something you didn't get in your country. Your country, there was nothing for you to get. Okay, I'm back. Someone knocked on the door. They had to get something out of the office. And again, I'm recording in New York City in our little theater office, putting down these thoughts. But this was supposed to be about the public parks for the children. Now, Central Park is an amazing place. It really is a gift to the city. And every time I go there, I'm like, why don't I go there more? And Bryant Park is amazing. And Madison Square Park is amazing. And it's got some amazing parks and places for kids to play. But I think we have to make a concerted effort to make sure there are playgrounds, places that are safe for children to go and play without worrying about adults, without worrying about, other children doing anything. I mean, again, you're not dealing with bullies is a whole different conversation. How do you, in a modern sci-fi world, you'd use AI and robots and you'd have bully patrols. You'd have nothing but animatronics, artificial intelligence patrolling halls, just looking for bullies and dealing with bullies then and there. And to me, that's another aspect of that's a decent film. And New York City could also get into the film industry. It could say, look, we're going to make 10 films a year, at around $10 to $20 million each, made by the city of New York using New York City, which is its own character. And we're going to fund 10 movies. 10 million each, $100 million. The hope is maybe one of them strikes gold, catches lightning in a bottle, and maybe all of a sudden New York City has its own film industry where the city is making films and maybe making $500 million to $1 billion a year off the films it's making. At a minimum, it would be creating jobs for people in the film industry to say, look, but again, the film industry, that whole world is a world of layers and levels, and who's going to decide what film is going to get made. And again, it all happens in moments where someone submits and then all of a sudden someone says, yes, we're going to make your movie and we're going to fund the movie. And again, I don't know enough about the movie industry and how films actually get made, but I suppose they get made by money. If you have money, a friend of mine just went to France to make a $500,000 film, and he's making $500,000 independent films. So that's another way that as a city, we can say, let's get into the film industry. Let's make movies. Let's make movies about New York and the 5 boroughs. Tell these stories. Make 10 a year and see if all of a sudden one of them goes global. I mean, if I could, I'd rather make 20 movies at $500,000 each than make one movie at $20 million. I think there's just a better chance to tell the story. Not everybody needs the whole golf bag. There are plenty of people out there who can play with a couple of golf clubs, meaning you don't need all the bells and whistles of technology to make a great film. Now great films can be made with much less. The audio has to be good. You know, you can't skimp on audio. But the video part of it, that can be iPhone, that can be Red, Sony, Panasonic. There are various cameras you could use to make films, you know, and then the lighting. But the sound is what you really can't skimp on any level, whether it's this or making a film. But it would be a way for the city, like, how is the city going to generate revenues? Is it only going to be through taxes, licenses, fines, violations, permits, tolls? How is the city going to generate revenue? And the city, in a way, needs to find a way to be its own revenue generator, to some degree through the arts, and also to some degree by allowing advertisers. We talked a little bit about last time about how do you allow different corporations to come in and buy advertising in a subway station, and in order to do that, they have to take over the whole subway station and make it like beautiful, like it was representing them in terms of the cleanliness, the tile, the painting, the security, and making sure it represented their product. The challenge is going to be who gets to advertise, who's going to make these deals, how do we make them transparent so that everybody knows, like, hey, this stop is now the subway stop for Fresca, which is owned by Coca-Cola, but they're taking it over. They have a 5-year lease. They're going to be paying $10 million a year to the city. On top of that, they're also going to be renovating it fully. And in exchange, you will see their advertising. And again, you could probably limit the amount, so it could probably say, look, we're not going to, you can have these spaces to do your advertising. It can't be everywhere. It can be 25% of the space. You can use your colors. But you have to look towards how do we generate revenues in order to create jobs for people. And some of those jobs could be cleaning the public parks and the playgrounds for children. And how big does a space have to be a playground? If a space is empty, and again, the city might have to go in and buy some property and say, look, is this eminent domain? Are we saying we're buying this property because we're going to use it to make city parks, city playgrounds? It may be the case. Someone will accuse you of being like Robert Moses, taking over people's homes, or going to places that already have playgrounds and updating them. But making sure that children have a playground within 5 blocks of where they live. Is that fair? 10 blocks? But a decent, solid playground that they can go after school and they can play. They can run around. They can chase. They can swing. They can slide. They can do pull-ups. They can hang. They can, throw a ball against a wall. But they can have a chance to be children. I mean, where are they going to practice hand-to-eye coordination? Where are they going to practice socialization? I mean, we don't even know right now the damage that COVID cost with shutting down the schools and not allowing those children to interact with other children for, how long was it? I mean, years? Minimum a year. They were looking into cameras. And for me, there's a certain amount of Zoom fatigue that happened when you were having meetings. And really, those meetings, after 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour tops, you reach some type of Zoom fatigue where you needed 10 or 15 minutes to not be looking into that camera, into that screen. So we won't know for a while what happened to those children who didn't get a chance to play. But all we can do is make sure the next generation and the generation right now do have a place to play in these playgrounds. And again, as I've said, what I got off on the tangent was about not cyber bullies, but cyborg bullies, bully patrols, artificial intelligence, robots, non-carbon based life forms that travel around schools, and just start keeping an eye on microaggressions and aggressions. And I guess it's a slippery slope because kids do need to have some level of, I guess, teasing. And I guess who would I be without my bullies? In my childhood, maybe I wouldn't have thought I have to, figure out a way to respond to them if there was no bullies. And I don't think it's possible to go through childhood without some bit of bullying or people saying stuff or people being mean or calling you dummy or, stupid or whatever they're going to do. And for some people who've got big hearts, that's going to hurt. And for others, they're going to let it go off like off a duck's back. They're going to be like, whatever. But it would be interesting. I would be interested in seeing a film, but again, what happens in that film? Unfortunately, one of the cyborg bully patrols or robot bullies maybe goes too far. Maybe there's a group of kids who are tag teaming who decide how are they going to take down this robot? Because that's what happens. It can't just be a beautiful sci-fi film where we introduce robots to make sure no one's getting bullied in schools, and all of a sudden it all works out and everyone gets the highest education they can. Schools are safe places. Schools are fun. We're turning out like the best kids, living up to their promise and potential within them. Something's got to happen in a movie. Either they go after, but again, to some degree, it is the plot to My Bodyguard, which is a great film of my youth, where this kid was getting bullied and then he got this other kid to be his bodyguard and he paid him, but then they got a bigger guy. I don't quite remember how it all worked out, but My Bodyguard was a great film of my youth. But, again, as I've said, I don't want these things to go longer than 30 minutes. I want them to be under 30 minutes. A spoonful, something you can wrap your head around. I think we have to be cognizant in meetings and conversations how to leave them wanting more. And maybe I haven't already. Maybe I've already spoken too far. This has been kind of a choppy one because of the starts and stops during the conversation and the things that happen. But again, this is for one person. Maybe it's for me. Maybe it's for that one person who's interested. Again, mayor of New York is not necessarily something I want to do. Being a politician is not necessarily something I want to do. Some people are drawn to it. They've done politics through school. They were on student government, student boards. They were president of their high school. They really want to be politicians. I hope people who want to be politicians want to do it for the right reasons. And my hope is that more young people get into politics and realize, if I don't get into politics, then someone else is going to decide my future for me. Again, something I didn't discuss today is I think the voting age should be lowered to 16. Some people are trying to raise it to 25. That is ludicrous to me. To me, it's like the voting age should go as low as we can possibly conceive, because at some point in a futuristic world, everyone should be allowed to vote who lives in an area because it's going to affect them. Because we have to stop looking at things in terms of days, weeks, months, and years, but in terms of decades, half centuries, and centuries. Real global countries who've been around for thousands of years, they look at things in terms of centuries at a minimum. How do we make this century our century? So as I've said, I don't want to have this thing go too long, and I just cranked it right there with the outro music, so we're coming to an end. I love New York City. I want New York City to succeed, to be the greatest city in the world, to be that shiny example of a city on the hill. I want it to provide the most it can for the most people it can. I love New York City. I hope New York City loves me. And I hope someday these ideas are utilized because I love New York.